one of the things that I am fortunate to get to do in the business that I'm in is, we get to go see different farms and different properties, and every farm, every property has got a different story, and there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, all the things that people have been through and all the things that have changed over time, and how they dealt with certain circumstances along the way. So I have wanted to put together a little bit of a kind of a show, kind of a thing where I can go talk to people that have lived through those different things and have that experience, and try to translate even that experience to the younger generation that's coming up, and what can they learn from, because what's the saying, you grow old too soon and wise too late, right? So what can we take from the school of hard knocks of land ownership and farming, and all the different things that impact those things along the way. So anyway, I thought no better person to start with than my own uncle, and have a conversation about the family farm that we still have today in the family. So anyway, Nathan Foyles, when would you say, how old were you when you started as a child being on the farm?
Well, I lost my leg at 10 years old working. Got caught in a power takeoff. So
of an auger
wagon, right behind the tractor, and lost my leg at 10 years old. But it didn't affect me any, as far as as soon as I got that leg on. When in fact that spring I stayed home from school and helped Dad put the crop in, and only had one leg because he had a John Deere tractors, and I could use the hand clutch and then switch the other leg from brake to brake to turn the corners.
That's right.
I couldn't go help Grandpa Hackney no more because he had international tractors.
Didn't have the right equipment.
He didn't have the right equipment.
So what year would that have been about?
Well, that would have been in '59 when I lost my leg.
Okay.
And we had moved on that farm Dad had when I was 3 years old in 1953. So when he moved in there in March of '53, and then '54 was when they had the drought. So it was a drought, yes, and did raise anything. We had a corn. We raised a little corn down in the bottom, and Dad said that was it. He didn't raise any up on top. Chopped every bit of it and put it in an old pit that they just dug it out with a dirt floor. Didn't even have nothing on the bottom, and fed some cattle with it, and just carried them on through to the winter. And he had some cows, and that's what they didn't have end up with no pasture either. So he used that to get the cows through the winter, and then he'd bought a few just real plain cattle that didn't. He always called them yellow hammers.
Yeah.
And it didn't take much corn to slick them up, and then they probably didn't weigh 800 pounds when he sold them, but it didn't take much grain. So what he did, he just he had to buy it. He had to buy the grain.
Now at that time, Grandpa was renting that farm.
He
right?
rented it. We rented that farm from '53 until '77. And we bought it in '77.
And how many acres was that farm?
480 acres.
480.
And about half of it was tillable and half of it was timber ground. And at that time, we run cows in the timber ground. We run cows out in that. It was all fenced.
Yeah. You used it all.
We used it all. Yeah.
Now, if I remember right, and I don't recall every story that I heard from Grandpa, but at that time, the story you were just telling about that instance where they had, they didn't raise any crop. He didn't really have any money to feed or to even buy any other cows, correct? And didn't he get a loan from?
Well, from Mr. Kelsey. In fact, Dad went in that spring after he didn't raise nothing and said, "Mr. Kelsey, I don't have no money." He says, my cows, and Mr. Kelsey looked at him and said, "Well, Quentin, are you going to sell them?" No, well, then it's okay.
Yeah. And he, I mean, at the time now, Mr. Kelsey, was he the president of the
Yes,
bank?
he was the president
of the bank.
he was the president of the Citizen States Bank of Shipman.
Yeah. And that was prior to them being bought by.
Oh yeah, way
before.
They wasn't built. I don't remember now the year that they sold to Carlinville, but it was years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he was already passed away whenever that happened.
But during during that time and for many years after that, the importance of how important was it for Grandpa and the family to have a relationship and the trust of a banker like Mr. Kelsey?
That was the only reason you made it back then. I mean, it wasn't, you was not a number back then. You was a person.
And there was no government kind of different, nothing.
And so much of that stuff was that, they just done it, they done it on on your name, like Dad said, and, he'd already bought them cows. And then, the next year, he didn't even, his financial statement, he was in the hole.
Sure, it wasn't good.
No, it wasn't good.
There wasn't any balance.
1 year of farming it, and he was already in the hole.
Right, yeah. Grandpa would have been how old at that time?
Well, Dad was 22 when I was born, so I guess he'd have been 25.
Okay.
Because I was 3.
Young man.
He was very young,
Yeah. Limited farming experience. I know he'd, been raised farming a little bit.
Somewhat, and but he run a custom baling business. He done custom baling, too. So he'd actually done that before he started farming. When he come home from World War II.
So he rented the farm. And how many years had gone by before he made his first purchase?
Well, he didn't make his first purchase until I was out of school. I was, like I said, I was 22, 23. We bought it when I was 22, took it over in 23 because when we bought the farm, the guy that had it rented had another year's lease on it. So he farmed it the first year we owned it, So we actually took, in 73 was when we planted, that was our first crop when Dad bought. But him and I rented the Houndsley place, 560 acres, in 67, between my junior and senior year in high school. I wasn't out of high school when we rented that. And I signed the lease on it. And I wasn't even out of high school yet.
And how many acres was that?
That was 560 acres.
Okay.
And it was a good farm. It had good land, a lot better ground than Dad's did. It was a lot of black ground, good ground there, And it was a livestock farm too, so.
Now, that's obviously not something that we really see today, where somebody owns a farm of that size and people rent it, live on it, use it. Obviously there's landlord-tenant, relationships with tillable ground, row crop and whatnot. Right. But like the farm that, Grandpa started renting, who owned it? Who was he renting?
Creel Fredericks, and they was from Avon, Illinois. But his dad was a land trader. So he had a whole bunch of little parcels of land around that he had purchased, and he traded all them little ones for this 480 acres, one chunk of ground. Okay. And that's how he got Creel's dad got it, so he had owned it. And then he also owned 320 acres south of Shipman. Benny Pittman used to live on it. And like Loy's farm it now, Loy from Jerseyville. I think it's Roger, and I don't know which one of the boys have it, but they bought that back in the, 70s, like that, So
what do you remember what rent was?
Well, we just rented half 50-50, but most of the time that was about $65 an acre was cash rent at that time. If you could, but most everybody rented 60-40. If you didn't have livestock you just rented it 60-40. The tenant, the landowner got 40%, and the guy that put his machinery and the labor and everything against it, he got 60%.
Now, did that include now the house and that too, staying at the house?
Well, yeah, on ours, the house was included with on the livestock farm. Like the 560 that I rented, that was included the house, the buildings, and everything, And they furnished half, and we furnished half. So when we bought cattle, they owned half of them, and I owned half of them. When we sold them, they got half, and I got half. Same way with the inputs. So we always had. I always said that about my mom. She could just, she kept unbelievable books because, we had so many, all three of us carried around 2 or 3 checkbooks, and she kept track of all that stuff. She was amazing.
Yeah, every good farm had to have a good woman like that behind them,
Yeah.
Not only to keep them fed, but
just like that. That was always the last thing my mom done every day was done books. She'd go in there and keep and write because she had to, because we was writing checks. I know. There was. I always said we run our outfit out of our back pocket. Because we just might walk in and say, "Mom, hey, we just wrote a check for $10,000 today." So she kept track of all of it. And she did it on paper. And you could go back with her, just like when the government really got involved. And, for years, the livestock man couldn't take advantage of the government programs at all because you fed so much. They wanted tickets that you sold. So we didn't ever get advantage, but all at once, then everybody got advantage. They signed a new bill, and the livestock man could take a loan and on grain and still feed it. You could buy it back, And
what year did that happen?
Well, that happened whenever we had so much corn. So that would have probably been towards the late 80s. They had a pick and roll program, that you could buy pick certificates and buy your corn back. So we could fill them silos, them harvestors and concrete silos and all of our bins, take a loan out on it. They was a loaning, like, I don't know, 2 1/4, 2.26 or something like that. But then we was buying it back for, $1.40, with these pick certificates. Some we'd have to pay maybe 102% or 103%. I think the most I ever paid was 106%, so 6% over, whatever the face value was. And they come from Texas and Kansas and all over the place. Bought them on the Board of Trade, and then took them in and traded them in for the grain that was in our silos. And then got to feed it to $5 cattle because the cattle was making about $5. Every bushel we shoved through a cattle was making $5 a bushel on them,
So was that something that really changed the balance sheet?
That changed our balance sheet big time. You can still go, and that was really before we even, we was paying individually Social Security, and so. You can go back on my Social Security. I can still get my Social Security thing back, and you can still see them years right there because that's what put us up on top. We really struggled for a long time. Just making the payments, and that was about all. But that, and we was feeding a lot of cattle then. And and the guys that was grain farming, all he got was that little bit of difference between what he could buy pick certificates. So they really didn't do it. They didn't do it. If they would have been doing it, then the pick certificates would have been a lot more than the 100 what I was having to pay for them, But it was no advantage to them. They wasn't only gaining. They was only gaining about 40 cents, where I was gaining, that 40, 50 cents plus feeding $5, to the cattle. So that was an extra part, that I got. It's just like you took a check in and they take them in and they give you a check, back. It was just, And it was a lot, you know. I mean,
What time frame do you think that was? Like, was that in
you know,
the 80s by then?
it was the late 80s.
Late
Because, see,
80s.
we had, from 80 to 85, we had 3 droughts. 3 low, 3 really. And then from 85, then we raised a good crop. And then we've, honestly and truthfully, till 2012, we raised good crops. I mean, no matter if you got them in June or whether you got them in April or May, when you raised a pretty good crop, you know.
So during those 3 droughts in the 80s, that was simultaneously when interest was...
Yes, at 16%.
Yeah, at least.
At least. And then there wasn't nothing. And it didn't make no difference at that time, if you was selling cattle, hogs, corn, wheat, beans, you could not make but about 8% on any of the things that you're selling. And then if you had any money borrowed on it, you was paying 16% interest on it.
Yeah, you could. The math didn't math.
It didn't math. It didn't work, you know.
So at that time, I mean, how many conversations were had at the kitchen table or out in the field or wherever of what are we gonna do?
Well, I don't know. That was my dad's. I knew I'd do this.
It's all right. That was a tough time for a lot of people, neighbors and everybody.
But he was positive about everything.
Thank God he was. Maybe that's where I get it from.
Yep, it is.
You got to have a glass that's half full.
You got to have that positive attitude. I always said it takes 10 positive to overcome 1 negative. You know. And
so he always just said, "It's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out.
That was it.
We'll make it work."
Yeah, always.
That's it. And had a good banker. Had
wonderful bankers. And we never bought a farm that it wasn't a struggle. You'd think you'd have it, and then they'd come back and say, well, we want to change this, or you're going to, and we'd already thought, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then, they want to change it in the midstream, like I said, we went to PCA when Dad and I bought that first farm. And we filled out papers and everything. It was great. And then all at once they said, instead of buying 560 acres, we really want you to just buy 400 acres. Well, that was the best thing that ever happened, not knowing it that day, because then we didn't go with PCA. We went up to the Shipman Bank and they said, well, I think we can work it out. And Mr. Kelsey, he just says, well, Nathan, Quentin, he says, Helen and I've got some money. We would help you out,
Personally.
Personally. Not from the bank, them personally. So, that kind of stuff is what, makes you appreciate,
But you guys never... when that interest was high and the droughts were happening and all that, you fortunately, yes, you were paying interest, but you, like on any land ownership or anything like that, you were never having to make payments on, 16, 18%.
No, that's what I'm saying, going back to leaving PCA and going to there, that was the best thing that happened, because then PCA was always going to be a floating interest.
Sure,
they would have went to 22%, because I had friends that went to 20, and you could not have done it.
No,
we locked ours in. I had a fellow, Bob Trost, come into my driveway one day, and he'd come back there and he said, Nathan, he says, you own some of the Snedeker ground? I said, Dad and I do. He said, well, I want to loan you some money on that. And I said, Bob, what are you talking about? I said, you'd have to take a second mortgage on this. You wouldn't want to. No, we'd do that. I said, you're what? We'll do that. He said, we'll take a second mortgage. We'll make your payment and your balloon payment at the end of 10 years. Because we bought that first farm on a contract for deed, 10 years with a balloon payment. And so that, and it was only going to raise our interest rate like 0.75%. We had it at 7 3/4, and we went to 8.5, and which that back then was about normal, and for 30 years, and nothing changed. We didn't never have to change. It was 30-year loan, and we went the whole 30 years right through it, locked in. Never did change it.
So this fellow made an unsolicited stop.
Yes, he did. He just come in. I didn't call him. My dad didn't call him. None of us. He just come in. He knew we had bought that farm, and then in that same conversation, it was 3 years later, we knew that the 480 that my dad had lived on for 25 years was coming up for sale. And I said, well, Bob, I don't even know if we aren't going to be able to. He says, well, to buy that. And he says, Nathan, we'll loan you the money on it.
Yeah. Well, hey, while you're loaning, how much can we get? Right?
Well, I mean, and that's what it boiled down to, and he was right there at the sale when we bought that farm that day. And, it was just, and
it was a godsend.
It was a godsend because that, and we locked it up for 30 years and we went 30 years. We didn't ever change it. We didn't ever refinance that ground. We just left it just like it was. And we bought more ground, but we had some money to put against it to the 20% that it took. Yeah. We didn't have to put nothing against that ground.
So really that guy pulling in there and talking to you that day.
Yes.
Changed the direction
of our whole thing. And that's the reason why we're still farming today.
Yeah, because you were able to permanently lock in the Snedeker farm,
right. and
then turn around and pay for the farm that was being rented.
Yep, he loaned us the money on it too, and then locked it all in.
How much at the time? How much money would that have been roundabout?
Well, we give $400,000 for the 560 acres, and we give what. 270,000 for the 480, which was like $535 an acre, and the Snedeker ground was $716 an acre or something like that.
So at that time, do you remember? I'm sure you do, but this, like Grandpa's reaction, who had jumped around and rented different things, his whole childhood, or his dad did.
Yes. His dad. For
him to have bought the farm that he was renting.
Yeah.
The feeling that he probably had.
That's right. It did. It just made my dad, to be able to buy that, and if we hadn't have bought the 560 acres, I don't think he could have probably, if he'd have just still been there renting it, and that's all he would have had, he would have not been able to have bought it, but we had bought that and land had went from $716 to, when we had it appraised, whenever Metropolitan Life took that over, they appraised it at $2,000 an acre. And that was in the late 70s, before the fall. By 83, it went to $1,000 an acre.
Right.
It went from 2,000 to 1,000.
Correct.
It went half.
Which is about one of the only times we've seen land do that.
And it didn't last long.
Because of the interest and people.
Yes, that's right. And so many people losing their farms, in 83, we bought the 80 next to the 560 and made us 640 acres there. And, we bought it at $1,070 an acre. Right. And that was really the only piece of property at the day we bought it that you could have penciled it and made it pay.
Yeah.
Because things had come back enough that that was the only piece of ground. It was all farming ground. It was the only piece of property that we bought over the years that you could sit down and say, okay, we can pay this much because we can make it pay. It'll pay itself for itself, But like I said, that was in 83. Whenever we bought that. And then things turned around and kept going back. And it wasn't long till it was back up to $2,000 an acre. And then it went from there right on up. My dad would have I mean, I can't even imagine what he'd think today of what this land would bring today. 'Cause, you know, I mean, when he passed away, he thought he was broke. So did my mom.
Yeah. Dirt poor, right?
Yeah,
Dirt poor.
yes, that's right. That's right. So like I said,
so once you pushed on through the 80s, later on in the 80s, things turned around and were clicking. You owned ground. Yeah. You were getting land appreciation. The cattle thing kicked in.
Yeah.
So it started to become a little bit easier.
Well, sure.
Throughout the years of
well, yeah. I mean, and we was making the payment. As long as we made that payment, it was just like putting money in the savings account. I mean, every year we made that payment. And it just, you making a payment, but then you was getting advantage of the inflation that would just kept going up. And that thing has really widened a long ways in the years. I mean, it's just kind of unbelievable. But I mean, if I hadn't have done it when I was young, I mean, very few people buy ground whenever they're, 23 years old. 560 acres. I mean, Dad and I bought it together, and Dad didn't own no ground before that. But like I said, but we had the 480 and the 560 that I'd rented, and then we bought the 560 acres. So like I said, then we had to buy some machinery to be able to. My first two tractors that I bought new, I bought that, it's 73 and a 74, and the first 5 years we owned it, we put over 1,000 hours a year on every one of them tractors. I mean, and 5 years old, it had 5,000 hours on it. I mean, you had to stay on it. But we was, they run every day because we was in the livestock business. So we was feeding cattle, you was grinding, you was hauling manure, you was hauling hay, they run every day. And then we was able to get them two big tractors to do our farming with, and it didn't take as near as long to get it in and get it in the ground back then. We went to 12-row corn planters, bigger stuff, because of them, so.
Was there along the way? Was there other opportunities of land purchases that you guys thought about doing, wish you would have done, or didn't work out for any particular reason?
Oh yeah. Well, the day that Duff and I bought, we bought the 80, and we give 1,000 and, like I said, $70 an acre for it. The day we went to, they offered us the 160. And they was going to carry the money.
Oh, boy.
And when I come out of there, I told my Duff, I says, well, this is probably the biggest mistake we've ever made, is walking out of here and not signing. I mean, then the lawyer was there, the owner was there, and
could have done it right then.
And I wanted to say yes so bad.
But it was
But I was thankful that I had the money to buy the 80, because so many, I didn't have a neighbor one bid. That was because there wasn't nobody was in a position to do it.
Everybody was hurting.
They was hurting, I mean, it's a whole different story today,
Yeah.
I think
hindsight's always.
Landers was the only ones that owned the funeral home, and Bunker Hill was the only one that bid against me, I mean, no, and I'm sure there was some people there that could have bought it, but they wouldn't bid against us, they was neighbors, good friends, so like I said, it was,
So 160 acres, and they was going to carry the note.
They was going to carry the note and sell it to us at the same. No, it was a little higher because it had a house and stuff on it, you know. And we had no use for a house, Not the saying you couldn't have sold it off, but and we didn't, and.
Well, it's hard to make a judgment call in the heat of the moment, too, while you're sitting there. Hey, do you want to buy another X amount?
Right.
Although in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I probably should do this.
Yeah.
But as you said, you're thankful that you just did what you did do.
Right.
So
and we bought the 80 at the auction. They had the auction right there, and I bid it in right there. Well, they had to sell. The guy had to sell the 80, but that cleaned him up. So he still had the 160 that he was willing to take, and it was a pretty good interest that he was willing to carry it too, But like I said, we just hindsight's 2020, and we didn't, I thought about that many times, and
every time you drive by it,
I drive by it. Because it was a good farm too, Wet, but it was still good. So was the 80 I bought,
Yeah. What would you say to people right now that look at the interest rate of 6% and feel like it's not manageable?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you're at and what you've got, but I mean, it's still, the land that the day we bought it, that we couldn't make it. Didn't look like it would. It wouldn't pay for itself. It just wouldn't. We was having to help it out with the ground we was renting and stuff, But it wasn't long until it was taken care of. Well, then, every bit it just keeps you can't. The day you buy it, you always buy them. They're always too high, and you never know. But it's never happened outside of in the late 70s. Late 70s is whenever it fell to almost a half. It did. It went from $2,000 an acre to $1,000 an acre. But it, like I said, that was in 83 when we bought that. But by 85, it was back to 1,700, and then it just kept climbing from there on. It just, and then in the 90s, it was $3,000 to $3,500 an acre, and then, by the time it was into the 2000, into 2010, why, then it's coming back and it's just kept going ever since.
Yeah, you haven't seen it let off.
No, it hasn't. I mean, not the good land. I mean, and honestly, there's so much of the rougher ground is, getting sold off and guys that's hunting on it and managing it for the wildlife, and that wasn't even thought about whenever we was buying that land.
Sure.
It's like when we bought the 480 acres, my land, that thing was half. I mean, you talk about a reserve, and we had crop ground all the way through it, so they had food but when we first done, there was no deer, when I got out of high school, we didn't start hunting deer until I was, probably 22, 23 before we even got to seeing any deer.
Yeah. So what, that was in the 70s also?
Yes.
So in the 70s, you don't just drive down the road and see deer out and whatever.
No. You had to, we didn't even think there was even any there. And the first morning we made a big old drive, and my dad killed 2 deer the first morning,
So and what year do you remember what year they opened that up?
In Macoupin County. Well, they had opened it up in Macoupin County, but they wasn't any where was
no
at.
Deer too.
They was all on Macoupin.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd take up behind, Beaver Dam, and then that's where they started. They was in behind. They dumped them loose in behind Beaver Dam, and then they just kept coming up the creeks and end up across the railroad tracks and back in there. As they kept getting thicker there, they kept moving out. To food source. Same way the turkeys. When Dad went to turkey hunting, they wasn't he was going to Missouri first. Then he ended up going to Calhoun. Then he went up to Macoupin. He hunted up on Jim Frank up there on Macoupin, turkey hunting, and then all at once they showed up, where we was at.
So when the deer hunting started, now would Grandpa have ever even hunted in Calhoun for deer as a young man, or no? That wasn't even a thing. Huh?
No. His first deer, the only deer hunting he ever done was went to Colorado and deer hunted.
So the first year you guys started out, you've always done deer drives for the most part. Is that what happened the very first year?
Yes,
hey, let's try it and see if
he'd been to Colorado, and that's how they did it out there.
Oh, so he
learned it from out there.
Okay, so
they drove out there.
Hey, we can do that here.
Yeah, we can do it here. So that's what we done. Dick B.O. done. When Dad and Mom went out there deer hunting, that's how they done it. They drove. And they did the first year I went elk hunting back in '79. They drove.
Yeah.
They drove the elk. You know, I mean, I killed the elk the first year out there, and they had spooked him out, and he come right down there by me. You know, so we'd kill half of the deer that was killed in Macoupin County. We'd kill them every year. We'd have half of them. You know, so
Yeah.
you know,
So, and then progressively every year there was just more and more deer all the time.
Oh yeah,
Just
more
never
and
did.
more and more and more. Yeah, they just
Until it probably became a problem for farming.
well, they
and
did,
everything else,
and that's the reason why we hunt them so hard in the fall, because I mean they do a lot of damage on our type of ground. You know, I mean, yes, you south of 16 down in here, you know, in that flat country, there ain't that many deer, but you know, you get up around us, and I mean, them little small areas and small fields and in the bottoms and stuff. I mean, they just annihilate it. You know, between the coons and the squirrels and the deer and the, you know, I mean, they work on it. You know, and
one other thing I wanted to touch on is I remember several stories, and none specific, but just about, you know, growing up on a farm and working on a farm and having support from the neighbors. Like, you know, I know there was one time, like when Grandpa, you know, was...
He had appendicitis attack in the spring, and all the neighbors come and put the crops in that spring. He got the plowing done. He stood up on the tractor and finished up because he was hurting so bad that he didn't know what was wrong, you know, and he ended up going to the hospital, and he had appendicitis, and they had to take his appendix out. And so therefore then, you know, they had an organization called ATA, Anti-Thief Association was what it was. It used to be HTA, Anti-Horse Thief Association, but it didn't become ATA. And I was a member of it. Duff was a member of it. We was all members of it. You know, I mean, it was just you know, the guys get together once a month, and, you know, somebody always fixes the food, you know, and then you just go and you have a little meeting and they play cards, and it was just a guy thing, you know. I mean, but boy, they supported everybody. I mean, and there were several that I went and helped, and there were several that day. I mean, and Webb Call was the gas man, and he furnished the fuel. He come out and made sure everybody's tractors was full when they got done, and all the neighbors. And, you know, I mean, you know, Tom Connors and, well, young Tommy and his dad both was there. Lester Howard. I mean, they was everybody around here. Uncle John and Uncle Lee and, you know, Uncle Bob, and all of them was all there, you know, and Harry Loy was there. Bill Carnes was there. I mean, you know, we, you know, they put it all in the day.
Mm-hmm. Was they all hoping to eat at Grandma's
table?
Yeah,
Grandma had the food. She had all the meals ready, you know.
So one thing that's really unique about these farms here are the gas wells.
Yes.
So at the time of renting the farm, was the gas well, it was non-existent, was it? Or was it there?
No, it was. It was existent. There. But what it was is Krill Fredericks, he was the kind of guy that he was looking for a fast dollar, and somebody had talked him into investing into an oil well. And this guy was from up around Avon, is where he was from, that come down here and drilled. And, well, they drilled for oil and hit gas. Well, so they put that in, but this outfit was a kind of a, you know, fly-by-night outfit, and the pipe they used was pretty rusty.
They put a rusty pipe in the ground? Yes,
in the ground. So it didn't last very long, and it was leaking. So then my dad, even while he rented the ground, but when that guy had the lease, the oil driller, mm-hmm. and he sold that to Dad for $5.
You're kidding me.
Give it to my dad for $5. So Dad had the mineral lease on that 480 acres. Dad did. That guy, because he had it, you know, and then he sold it to Dad, you know, for $1.
And Grandpa just decided, call him one day and work that out, and the guy says, no problem. And
old Rich sold that to Dad. He liked Dad, and he gave it to Dad, the lease on it. And then we got old Carl, he was from Staunton. He drilled. He was an oil driller. Carl Wilson from Staunton. we had him come, and he drilled and just went down to the gas and put a new pipe in. And, Dad bought new 4-inch pipe, and then that's what we're still using. I mean, that original pipe, and still, that was, my gosh, that was when I was a kid. That was when I was, I guess I was 10, 12 or 13 years old whenever that was, so, you're talking, over 60 years ago. It's been a heat in the house and barns and anything you use, I mean, for years.
Well, if you had any advice to give to a young farmer or a young person buying a piece of ground or just getting into, kind of what you have been through, is there anything you can think of that you would say from any lesson you've learned or what you've seen, land do throughout your lifetime?
Well, there's never, it's never too soon to start. That's all there is to it,
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it. The younger you are and the better, I mean, if you can swing it and you've got the opportunity to get it, I mean, even if you can buy one on a contract for deed or something, I mean, I'd say go for it. I mean, that's, but that was always a dream of mine. And I've always been a firm believer. You got to dream it before you do it. Yeah. It'll never happen until you dream it. You wouldn't believe how long I dreamed about farming that Snedeker ground over there, and not dreaming it, never thought about buying it. I wanted to rent it. I wanted to rent it, because I was going to show them they could really raise a lot more crop than they did. And well, then that's what happened. They wasn't raising enough, and they said, well, this thing ain't making us nothing. We're just going to sell it,
But they just wasn't farming it quite right.
There was 1,080 acres there, and it brought $1 million back in '73. And Richard bought 520 acres, and Dad and I bought 560 acres. And Richard was a plus for us too. Richard, we had bid 400,000, Dad and I had, on 640 acres, and Richard had bid 500,000 on the ground that he had. And so he come back to us and said, well, you guys, if you will trade me this 160 where John's house sits and Rick's house sits, he said, I'll give the other 100,000 if you guys will still give the 400,000 for the 560. So he helped us out a lot. I mean, Richard did. I mean, Richard, he, wonderful neighbor. That's all there is to it. I had started grinding feed for all my neighbors over there as in high school, and I told them that I'd come and scoop all the corn and put it in the feeders for their livestock anytime they wanted, because Dad had a Bearcat grinder and mixer, and then I'd charge them same thing as they was hauling into town and grinding it in there. It was the same price. And they said, well, that's a good deal. We don't have to touch it, because they was just scooping it in out of the bin and putting it in their pickup truck, hauling to town, and then coming home and scooping it out of the pickup truck and putting it in. Now they don't have to touch it.
Yeah,
they delivered. I put it in a feeder for them.
You were the early Amazon man.
I was. And the day I was grinding feed for the neighbors up there for Roger Gilman, I seen this car come in, and Jim Frank got out of the car, and I thought, oh my gosh, the cows are together, because he farmed that 560 acres next to Dad's 480, and he come up there, and I was just scooping. I got done, got the thing full, and of course, I always scooped it all, because I could scoop it faster than that little table would take the corn. So I could scoop that 2,000 pounds quicker than if I waited on that thing to trickle in. So I didn't have enough time in my day to get it all done if I waited on it. So anyhow, I thought we got cows together, and he come up there and he said, Nathan, he said, I'm leaving that farm over there, and if you would be interested in renting it, it's going to be for rent. He said, this is who you need to go see, Orville Mowry and Carlinville. Man, I went straight home. Dad come in at noon. He wasn't there that morning. He come in at noon. I said, Dad, we got to go to Carlinville. He said, why? He says, this Houndsley ground is going to be for rent, and nobody knows it but us. So
got
we
first
went.
go.
We went to Carlinville that afternoon and basically rented. They come the next weekend and Arville and Stanley Kloss and give me the papers and I signed the lease on it. The next weekend. So, so that's how that got started. So them kind of things, you just got to be able to step through the door when them do happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't stand back and think about it. You just got to do it.
Right.
Whether it's buying ground or, I mean, I never dreamed it. I mean, tried to buy 320 acres over there, before. Well, they decided not to sell. And then when this come up for sale, there was 1,080 acres there. And I, holy cow, that's a lot of ground there, I mean, but, it worked out.
So it doesn't come without first a dream.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Some sacrifice.
And struggles.
And struggles.
I said that 80 acres is the only farm that I ever bought that there wasn't struggles to get it before thinking we had it and then something show up, I mean,
some
like
hurdle, some hiccup.
something like the 480 acres that we bought in on the courthouse steps that day, and some of their lawyers that the family had gotten a squabble and forced sale on it. And it was the guy that had appraised it at $530 an acre, and they had added zeros onto the end of it to make it $530,000, not per acre, a total amount of $530,000. You can see they didn't use the same ink pen; it was a different colored ink pen, and well, so it didn't bring 60% of what it was appraised at. Well, of course, the guy that Stanley had done the appraising on it, he was there, and he said, what it did too, it brought more than what I appraised. Well, he went in, and of course, they had to go in front of the judge that day, go back in and go in front of the judge, and this, as you can see, they've added zeros on here. So who did this, add them zeros? Nobody confessed to it, but anyhow, the judge says, oh, okay, it's okay then.
Yeah.
It's sold.
Yeah.
So we got it bought.
But you got to be persistent, and you got to have patience.
Yes, patience.
'Cause
And Travis has a lot of patience. Because the last land I bought, I was ready to give up. And he says, no, Nathan.
Yeah.
Let's see what this.
We got jerked around on that deal.
Yes,
a lot.
we did. That's
Plenty.
what I'm saying. A lot.
Plenty.
And so that's what I said. We never bought anything that there wasn't struggles to get your hands on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you have to go through them struggles to get it. Whether I had lots of friends that they went broke in the late 70s and 80s, and they've been by near the land I did, and Dad and I did, The farming was definitely a struggle, and like I said, I know when my mom and dad both, when they passed away, they felt they had no money, whatsoever, and then and then you get the appraised value of what they accumulated over them 60 years,
Right.
I mean, it was just amazing,
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you start,
They'd had a
800
smile on their
acres is
face,
a lot,
Yeah.
but they didn't have no money, I mean, and that was fine. That was suited them fine. They didn't need no money as long as Dad could hunt and do, and that's what he enjoyed more than anything was that 480 acres. I mean, he'd done a video with Donnie Bland in there one time, and I mean, he just says it's just so good to be able to turkey hunt and have this 1,000 acres that we can hunt on, and we don't have to worry about having a place to hunt. Who gets that opportunity? He was proud of it. I mean, he was proud enough that there wasn't no game warden come on that farm, to tell him what he was going to do. Because I mean, he like the game warden in Carlinville said, he'd never had an ass chewing like my dad give him. He said I can tell you, I'm going to go to my grave, and that was the worst one I ever got.
What did he get? What did he get chewed out for?
Because he'd come on Dad's ground to see what we was doing.
Yeah.
And man, he didn't like it.
He didn't want nobody over his shoulder.
Nope,
Right?
he didn't want nobody to tell him what he was going to do. He says, I paid for this, so-and-so, and you ain't telling me nothing. And furthermore, you're on my property, and you better get off of her now. So
And I guess that's what he did. Huh?
That's what he did, and he never come back. And there were several that wanted to come back, and Brad says, I wouldn't go back down there if I was you. He said, they'll take care of it.
Yeah.
They won't be nothing going on. It'll be just
right.
fine, you know.
Leave him be.
Leave them be, you know. And because I've talked to a game warden or two that come down Mom's Road, and said, we never had no calls. Well, no, we'll take care of what goes on here. It'll be just fine.
Yeah. We don't need any help.
They can't get in here. We're on all sides of it. We got it covered. There's no roads back in here, but except ones that we have. That's it.
Oh man. Well, I would say that all in all, it was a major success. What took place, although. Yeah. I'm certain that more than one time it was questionable what tomorrow held. But.
Yeah, it was struggles. I mean, there was times that we had to go to the bank and said, "Hey, we don't have enough to pay, on this piece of equipment." And they'd say, "Well, that's okay. We'll just add it on to the end of it."
Put it on the top.
Put it on the other end of it.
Yeah.
It'll just be, we're skipping this year.
Catch it next time.
You'll catch up next year. Mm-hmm. Not next year. It'll still be the same, but another year.
Yeah. That's what made the difference.
Yeah.
Because you could have surrendered and given in at any time.
And he was never one. I never heard my dad ever say, "Boys, we shouldn't have done that," or "You shouldn't have done this." I'm never. He was always said. I mean, Duff and I discussed several times. Oh man, we shouldn't have never done that. And then he'd say, "Well, it'll work out, boys. It'll be all right. It'll work out. We'll get through it." I mean, he was always so positive. So. Mm-hmm.